Nu ska vi gå över till forskningsdelen och den har letts av Roger Ulrich, vår gästprofessor som många av er känner.
Facility is going to be successful. It must be easily accessible to psychiatric patients without needing escort by busy staff. If it's a multi-story building, the garden is here, it's up here. There is no realistic or creditable possibility that the staff on, say, the fourth floor are going to be able to take down the patients who, if they're compulsory care patients like the ones we study, often must be escorted individually, can't be put in elevators together, etc., etc. In effect, such placement, such architecture with gardens is like shouting, we expect each ward to add 2 or 3 full-time staff to take on this extra job during daylight shift hours. That's not going to happen. There is an important study from the Netherlands on 198 units by Van der Schaft, professor of psychiatry in the Netherlands, which found that most of these facilities are multi-story with a garden outside. If the gardens are not accessible and locked, they are unused. And in fact, if the patients know they are there and can't get to them, it actually measurably increases stress and significantly is associated with significantly increased aggressive behavior, undermining sense of control. If the garden is easily accessible, you get the opposite. You get a high level of use. So this is how to do it. Have secure courtyard gardens. Low-rise buildings have powerful advantage. The door can be unlocked. These can be designed and have been designed in Scandinavia so that the staff can monitor the safety of the patients. Okay, wow, okay. And daylight, I have a little catechism here, lowers depression, may improve sleep, might lessen agitation, increases staff satisfaction. It's not as strong evidence here as for nature. So we have studies like this. This is a psychiatric facility in Italy. For patients with serious depression, they were somewhat randomly assigned to either the east or west side, and you can see that the morning sunlight is much greater on the east side. There was a shadow from a building interfering on the west side, and those with higher sunlight levels have shorter stays. So, designed for sunlight, but don't, as this has been done far too frequently in Scandinavia, less in Sweden than certain other places. Just focus narrowly on daylight at the expense of sort of throwing to the winds privacy, the welfare, and creating design that, in my opinion, harms patients, in which I know those units would not be accredited or approved as safe and worthy for occupancy by patients in other key countries, including North America. Those could not be occupied. So some Scandinavian hospitals have poorly placed windows and corridors, causing privacy invasions that are unacceptable. Absolutely, they're considered, I would say, abhorrent in certain Western countries. These are all over the place, these kinds of designs for somatic hospitals, and we're beginning to appear, and I'm alarmed by it, for psychiatric hospitals. Spacing, 15 meters. Can a person look into another person's window? Often it's the case. If you can, some countries will not approve the rooms for occupancy. People who are sick in the hospital, including psychiatric patients, become more vulnerable and more reactive to invasions of privacy. They need it more. And the evidence is, by designing for daylight with a fist into privacy and invading privacy, folks, oh, daylight's great, You take away the daylight because patients feel their privacy will be invaded. They close their blinds. They don't get any daylight. What's going on in a few of these designs? So yeah, it's a psychiatric hospital. This is not so bad, but you can see the mirror image on the other side. In the United States couldn't be occupied. That whole other side of the building would not be suitable for psychiatric patients. And this is a better example because in the spring or summer, there would be some vegetation to screen, but most of the areas that I've seen have virtually no planting on the grounds. We don't want to give patients hiding places. Designed for observation. Avoid ward plans dominated by corridors. These are notorious for hindering observation, lessening communication with patients, and increasing walking distances. If you have a multi-story building, you don't have much choice, but there's lots of other layouts. Floor layouts that arrange patient rooms around central areas can provide much better observation. They waste fewer square meters in corridors. You have more square meters as designers and clinicians to assign to good spaces like communal rooms. They facilitate better observation and communication with patients. So here's a linear ward, typical. Okay, here in Scandinavia, they're all over the place in older facilities. And this is taken in 2010. It had been just renovated. Some new category of less acute patients, outpatients, were being housed here. But you see how it allows visibility from the nurse area down the hallway. You can see some doors. I'm going to need a couple more minutes. But by the way, this had unacceptably high rates of aggressive behavior and other problems, and the facility here in Sweden has now been demolished. So nothing like this could ever happen in Scandinavia, or could it? Let's just imagine a hypothetical psychiatric hospital laid out as a racetrack. Here's the glass enclosed nursing station, and our nurse comes out to do observation of our staff and now has to walk down. He hits a blind corner, which is dangerous, and runs against every best practice that I know in any country internationally. Then you have blind corners into the communal rooms, blind corners again, another concealment, more risk. Oh, let's walk all the way down the hallway. Let's design this to maximize the obstruction of observation of corridors and communal rooms. Let's do it in the name of providing daylight. Let's have concealed turns and areas that create obvious safety risks for psychiatric staff, and obviously increases walking steps. Now imagine, just hypothetically, of course this could never happen, units like this were then cloned in the name of daylight and moved one after another so that the patient rooms look into each other's windows. Folks, I am so positive about Swedish architecture and Swedish healthcare architecture, and in some ways, with respect to daylight, some of the buildings are a 10 or a 9 on a 10-point international scale. But there are some real losers that don't do justice to the quality of Scandinavia, and they are 1 or 2. They're unthinkable units on an international scale. So, I've been a teacher a long time. Into Goodstand, I mean, what are they thinking? What's the jury thinking if this was built? Of course, it's hypothetical. All right, we've studied, 2 more minutes, 3 hospitals here in Västergötland. We're going to test the model. The 3 hospitals are quite different in design, but they're very similar in patients, treatment protocols, staffing levels, and bed occupancy rates. They're all very high, over 90%. And you can't see any of this. It's an old hospital compared with a new hospital. Whoops, sorry. It's worth it. And the new hospital has 9 of the 10 features that I just described. The old hospital had only 1. A control hospital had only 1. So we predict that new hospital will do better than the older control. So new hospital was superior across the board with respect to all 4 of those main categories of stress-reducing design. And particularly in social density, to achieve the same low social density as new at 100% occupancy, 4.4 patients, bed occupancy would have to drop off the table and plummet to 46% in old and 38% at control. And since they were running and are running at more than 90%, you know they're having problems. So here's one of the comparison hospitals, the old hospital. Linear corridors, views down the hallway, but not into the community, the communal areas. The good hospital, the new hospital, is a central area design here. The patients are here, mostly. These are all separate communal areas, and there's a garden that's immediately accessible through an unlocked door. So sight lines, easy. You walk around as a nurse, and you can see through shatterproof glass, half wall, and you have good visibility and daylight in the middle of the central area, and you can get right out in the garden. So what did we find? Come to the punchline. I am ending here. And this is a careful study. We started in the first of a 3-year study with old hospital and control. New hospital had not been built. We're looking at here the proportion of patients. These are all, again, compulsory care patients, similar categories, who need compulsory injections because they're aggressive. And the rate is about 21% in old hospital and about 19% in control hospital. So what happened when old hospital closed and new hospital opened with its better design, and about 90% of the same staff moved to new hospital when old closed. So the staff was saying, ha, 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 bravo. About the only situation that I know of in Sweden where this occurred. So it drops down to 13 from 21%. Well, what happened in control? Oh my goodness. Design matters. Oh yeah. Now, what about the number of injections for the patients getting them? We've just seen the proportion is cut by more than a third, or 45% in new hospital. So we wouldn't expect the average number of injections per those fewer patients to go down much, but it did somewhat. Remember, the proportion went way up in control, and so did the number of injections for each patient. Then, physical restraints, last one. Old hospital. Unfortunately, we have no data for control. They just kind of disappeared in the vapor. There were suggestions they were going to be pretty high. Old, new, 50%. Other factors the same. Old hospital had somewhat more space than new hospital. New hospital beat the heck out of it in terms of outcomes. The implication in my punchline at the end, designing psychiatric wards to include evidence-informed design features can have greater positive impact on outcomes than increasing just a space per patient. Tack så mycket. Sorry for being late.